Hey there and welcome to checking out the Aleph Support Pack, where you'll find your Sophotect Yudbots and Netrods for supporting the rest of your Aleph force. Here's the box contents: sons, bases and tabby cutting out your bits. But all the components for the miniatures. So we've got the two Yudbots. Each Yudbot comes with a main body, a set of arms and a set of gigantic floppy eerie looking things, which I assume are for transmissions and radar-y type telecommunications-y thingy whatnots. Keeping in touch with Aleph, you need big ears for that apparently. Then we have the hover base for the Sophotect themselves, the main body for the Sophotect plus the arm, which is on the right side, and then three two-piece Netrods. Here's a Sophotect body then, and as ever, pretty immaculate. There's an ever so slight cast line, but absolutely minimal. The injection points are coming in through the tab for the base, and there's a few release points in sort of expected corners. But pretty immaculate miniature. Also worth noting, this is I think an N2 miniature, or maybe an N1, but I think N2. And you can tell that because of the rounded joint for the shoulder. Hasn't switched over to the square sockets they use these days. Here's that right arm then, and you can see it's got an injection point at the top of the shoulder. It's not actually a horrible injection point, it's pretty easy to cut off cleanly. A couple of release points and virtually nothing in the way of cast lines. It's quite interesting to note that these older castings often have less cast lines than some of the more recent ones. These are the two supposedly identical pieces which form two halves of the hover craft device that the Sophotect utilises, and it's got injection points in the same place as both, and although it appears to be identical, it's actually not. They are actually opposite halves, if you like, where they go around like this. So one has this is a blemish. Checking on the image of the original, they should of the cover art, and both sides should be like this, and this is actually the front and the feet of the Sophotect tuck in behind it. And then you've got the linking point at the back here. Now one of them basically doesn't have a cast line, whereas the other one, so virtually no cast line, strongish cast line, but it's still very high quality. Here is the link for the back of the Sophotect's hover device. And it's quite clever because it incorporates the line for the cast line onto the top edge of this edge. However, there is a cast line running straight across this, so it should require a bit of cleanup. Other than that, injection point, a couple of release points, simples. Here are the two Yudbot bodies then. They're cast from the same cast clearly because identical poses. Injection points in the bottom of the tab, plus a couple of release points in the bottom tab. Release points, back of the feet, back of the head. No cast lines. These are absolutely immaculate. So here are the Yudbot arms then. Again, immaculate casting. We just have the injection points in the bottom. Do prefer the one going into the fist rather than the one that's going into the wrist. This will be much harder to cut away and clean up than this one. Other than that, a couple of release points on them all, and no cast lines. Here then are the Yudbot ears, and there is a cast line. It seems to be a tendency of these flat magazine shaped or sort of square rectangular in profile forms that they are more likely to show a cast line than other forms. Also, I think a lot of the other forms, they carefully craft their molds so that the cast lines are actually on the edges of things, which again goes a long way to concealing them. Here's the Netrods then, and these do have a cast line. They're running all the way around the edge in line with the tab. Other than that, injection point at the bottom, various release points, unremarkably at the tips of all of these sticky outy bits. That's an official term. Finally, we have the Netrod sails then, and there's no noticeable cast lines, just a couple of injection points, but they're right on the corner, very easy to trim away, and various release points at the tips. And not forgetting that in these packs you have the cutty out tabs on the ears, which include tokens for your games. So we've got a 1 wound token, a no wound incapacitation token, a couple of prone tokens, And also not forgetting that you can also cut out the icons. So if you get enough of them, you could always use them as command tokens, but also handy for marking link team leaders and what have you. Just a quick note when trimming this bit, one of the injection points actually injects in at one of these ends, and at either end there's actually a little lump which you can see here and here, and these are actually attachment points for fixing this as part of the mini. So just make sure if you are trimming this, carefully trim around this, and it does sort of go into half of one of these lumps, so you need to kind of cut it away from the lump, and it's kind of awkward. So a quick note about alignments on the Sophist's hover technology thingy whatnot. When setting up this back bit, you'll see that it kind of faces forward, and if you look at the profile you can see it's diagonal at the bottom, and each side has like this diagonal cup. And what I first did is I lined up so the two diagonals on the bottom would slot together like so, but then I realised that actually the diagonal in the bottom, only one of them actually lines up, so that in that V is just this lowest corner, and then the tip of it points to the front of the V. I hope that makes sense to you. One final thought then. When you are lining this up, it's worth noting that this all lines up with the top edge of a base, so when you are lining it up, do make sure that you've got it so that it sits, and you'll see that this is all flush. Flip it upside down, you see that rim sits around, so it sits perfectly around your base, so just bear that in mind when you're assembling it. Here we go then, all the components are all assembled and ready to go. Pretty easy assembly job, all said and done. Everything's gone together without any hitches, easy to clean, no messy or conundrums. Aside from the little details that I've already given you about the hover repair unit thingy whatnot, I'm not even sure what this is, to be honest with you. The hardest thing to assemble is actually getting on these fins over the top, because actually the circle isn't quite perfect, or it's almost the same size as this little notchy bit, so it does take a bit of wrangling to get it over. Also, I have trimmed the bottom of these so that I'll be able to drill and use that as a pin in the base that I'll be using for them, because as ever all of this stuff is going to get mounted on custom bases. The actual Sophotect herself, she actually stood on her own 2 feet once I'd assembled her. So although being glued in place, she does actually have a good centre of balance. The same cannot be said of the Yudbots, but that's to be expected because they have very narrow stances and also very small pads on their feet, so the thing that's holding them down is very small contact areas. Also on my Yudbots I did give her one wide ears and narrow sort of arms together, and then make one arm sticky out and our ears quite close together, just to create a little bit difference between the two models. I am a keen believer in models that look different rather than just having lots of identical things. So I hope all of your assembling, cleaning up is going really well and everything's coming together really easily for you. Hope there's been some use, interest. Thank you for watching, have a good one and take care. Bye bye.